Ladies and gentlemen, gather around. Forget everything your high school economics teacher mumbled about the Plaza Accord. That's the bedtime story Japanese bureaucrats tell themselves so they can sleep at night. The real killer of Japan? Not Reagan, not the dollar-yen exchange rate, not even the mysterious bubble gods. It's one man with a lion's mane haircut and a karaoke-level love for Elvis Presley, Junichiro Koizumi. Yes, the so-called reformer. The poster boy of early 2000s neoliberal cosplay. The man who strutted through Tokyo waving the flag of structural reform while secretly laying the landmines that would blow Japan's economy to bits for the next 2 decades. You think Japan collapsed because the Plaza Accord made the yen too strong? No. Japan collapsed because Koizumi looked at a weak patient and prescribed starvation as the cure. Bravo, Dr. Lionhair. Bravo. Stick with me for the next few minutes. We'll spoon-feed this in 6 chapters. We'll dismantle the Plaza Accord excuse, mock Koizumi's Elvis obsession, and show you exactly how reform became Japan's most stylish economic suicide note. So buckle up. You're not watching another dry economics lecture. You're about to watch a roast session where the punchline is Japan's GDP graph. Ah, the Plaza Accord. Every Japanese salaryman economist, every armchair historian, and every YouTube comment warrior loves to chant this name like it's some kind of economic voodoo spell. Oh no, poor Japan. We were victims of the evil Americans in 1985. They forced us to strengthen the yen and poof, bubble collapse, decades of stagnation. Blame the Plaza Accord, case closed. Really, that's the story. That's like blaming your divorce on the weather. Yes, the Plaza Accord happened. Yes, the yen went from cheap sushi to expensive sashimi overnight. But here's the thing, Germany signed it too. And the Germans didn't spend the next 40 years crying in their beer mugs. They industrialized, they innovated, they actually got stronger. Meanwhile, Japan kept pointing at the Accord like a toddler blaming the dog for the broken vase. The truth is, the Plaza Accord was convenient. Too convenient. It gave Japan an eternal scapegoat. Politicians could say, ah, not our fault, America bullied us, we're victims. And the Japanese public, raised to trust authority, nodded along. This excuse became a cultural crutch, recycled in every op-ed, every economic seminar, every lazy NHK documentary. But here's what they don't tell you. By the late 1990s, the real killer had already checked into the room. Structural rot was eating the bones of Japan's economy. Lifetime employment was cracking, zombie banks were stumbling around like extras from a bad horror movie, and wages were flatlining. But the government needed a distraction. Enter Junichiro Koizumi, the reformer with great hair and even greater hubris. He waltzed in, promising to fix everything, and instead smashed the little that was still standing. So the Plaza Accord? Cute bedtime story. The real nightmare hadn't even started yet, and it wore an Elvis wig. Junichiro Koizumi was not a politician. He was a rock star cosplaying as a prime minister. Forget policy. This guy's number one skill was posing in front of cameras with his lion's mane haircut, humming Elvis songs, and convincing the Japanese people that charisma could fix the economy. If political reform had an MTV music video, Koizumi would be strutting through it in slow motion. His structural reform slogan? Pure marketing. It sounded like salvation, but in practice it was closer to demolition. Koizumi sold himself as the man brave enough to bulldoze Japan's old ways. But what did he really do? He privatized Japan Post, the world's biggest savings bank at the time, and handed the nation's piggy bank to his cronies and foreign investors. Translation: Grandma's postal savings account, once the safest thing in Japan, became Wall Street's sushi platter. But the brilliance of Koizumi wasn't his policy. It was his ability to distract. While wages stagnated and irregular employment ballooned, people weren't thinking about their shrinking paychecks. No, they were mesmerized by his hair, his Elvis impersonations, and his dramatic speeches about breaking taboos. The man could have sold sand in the Sahara if he slapped the word reform on it. Let's be honest. Koizumi was Japan's Bush meets Elvis hybrid. He launched flashy wars on old structures. But like Iraq, there was no plan for what came next. Deregulation sounded sexy. until you realized it just meant corporations could fire you more easily, temp agencies could exploit you endlessly, and young people were locked into freeter limbo. And the Plaza Accord excuse, Koizumi loved it. It gave him cover. He could say, look, Japan is weak because America hurt us long ago. That's why you need my reforms. Brilliant move. Blame America, privatize the nation's savings, and still get standing ovations. Koizumi's legacy wasn't reform. It was turning politics into pop culture while hollowing out Japan's middle class. Elvis left the building, and so did Japan's economic future. If you were born in the late 70s or 80s in Japan, congratulations. Koizumi turned you into disposable labor. You didn't get a stable job, a house, or the old salaryman dream. No, you got a temp contract, zero security, and a boss who calls you replaceable to your face. Before Koizumi, Japan at least pretended to care about lifetime employment. It wasn't perfect. Women and outsiders were already pushed aside. But there was an unspoken deal. Loyalty to the company got you stability. Koizumi came along with his shiny structural reform and blew that deal to pieces. Deregulation of labor markets? Translation: Welcome to the gig economy, Japanese edition, 20 years before Silicon Valley thought of Uber. Suddenly, corporations could hire armies of temps, freeters, and contract workers without paying pensions or offering stability. Young people went from dreaming of a salaryman's suit to fearing the next month's rent. And when the media asked Koizumi's government about this crisis, what was the answer? Flexibility is good for the economy. Right. Because who needs housing, family, or dignity when you can be flexible? Let's not sugarcoat it. Koizumi's reforms created an entire generation of working poor. People in their 20s and 30s back then are now middle-aged, still stuck in irregular jobs, still with no savings, and now facing retirement with basically nothing. The irony? While Japan Post was privatized and handed to financial sharks, millions of Japanese families couldn't even secure a savings account worth mentioning. And yet, the Plaza Accord excuse kept humming in the background. It's not Koizumi's fault, it's America. Sure, the same America that didn't deregulate your labor market, didn't privatize your postal bank, and didn't push your young people into poverty cycles. That was all homegrown genius, baby. Koizumi didn't just reform the economy, he reformed the definition of a generation, from future taxpayers into disposable workers. The middle class, it didn't just shrink, it was sent straight to the clearance bin. Let's play a game of contrast, shall we? On one side, millions of Japanese citizens, ages 20 through 50, trapped in the hamster wheel of irregular work. No stability, no promotions, no pensions, just a rotating buffet of short-term contracts and convenience store shifts. On the other side, Junichiro Koizumi's son Shinjiro, gliding into politics as if you were handed a golden elevator to the top. While the so-called reform era gutted an entire generation, Koizumi Jr. became a poster child for hereditary politics. Daddy swung the wrecking ball, and Junior strutted onto the stage with perfect English phrases, designer suits, and an automatic seat in the Diet. He didn't have to fight through temp jobs, he didn't submit resumes to Hello Work, and he sure as hell never had to clock in at an Amazon warehouse at 3 a.m. That's for the other children, the ones his father's reforms condemned to precarity. Think about it. Japan's working-age majority was turned into what economists politely call non-regular employees, which in plain English means economic trash bags. Meanwhile, Koizumi's family line was upgraded like a political iPhone, and the media praised this dynasty as fresh blood. Fresh blood? Please. It's the same old aristocracy, only with cooler hair gel. And here's the kicker. Japanese society just shrugged. They accepted this hereditary pipeline while quietly watching their own kids stuck in contract hell. If Kim Jong-il passed power to Kim Jong-un, the West called it a dictatorship. When Koizumi handed Japan to his boy, they called it democracy. Isn't branding magical? So yes, the Plaza Accord is still blamed for destroying Japan. But the real tragedy is homegrown. A nation where ordinary citizens inherit insecurity, while elites inherit power. Koizumi's reforms weren't just economic, they were dynastic. And the message was clear. Your children get irregular jobs, mine get the cabinet. It's not just neoliberalism, it's hereditary neoliberal feudalism, wrapped in a suit with an Elvis soundtrack. Let's check the scoreboard of Koizumi's structural reform. Wages? Flatlined since the late 1990s, like a hospital patient with no pulse. Family formation? Collapsed. Marriage rates down, birth rates down, fertility chart looking like a ski slope. The dream of a stable middle class. Vaporized. What's left? A country that looks less like a vibrant economy and more like one giant assisted living facility. And don't take my word for it. Just ride any Japanese train at 10 a.m. Half the passengers are retirees shuffling with shopping bags, while the working age crowd is either overworked to death or stuck in irregular jobs that barely pay for instant ramen. Koizumi promised to revitalize Japan, but what he delivered was a geriatric cosplay convention where the only growth industry is adult diapers. Meanwhile, the middle-aged who were supposed to carry the economy, they're the lost generation now in their 40s and 50s with no stable careers, no savings, and no hope. These are the people Koizumi's reforms threw under the bus. You can privatize the postal bank, but you can't privatize dignity. And guess what? Without secure jobs, people stop marrying, stop having kids, and stop believing in the future. Shocker. But here's the genius part. The Plaza Accord myth kept running in the background like elevator music. Every crisis, every lost decade, every social collapse was explained away with, ah yes, the Plaza Accord of 1985. Never mind that it was Koizumi who deregulated labour, created disposable workers, and hollowed out the economy. It's much easier to blame Reagan than to admit your own leaders conned you. So here we are, Japan 2025. A nation with shiny trains and collapsing human capital, a GDP graph that looks like a flat ECG. A society where structural reform translated into structural despair. And the punchline, Koizumi is still remembered as a reformer. That's not reform, that's assisted suicide with better PR. Japan didn't just age, it was aged to death by design. What in the end was Junichiro Koizumi's grand legacy? Economic reform? No. Social revival? Please. His true legacy was hair. That lion's mane, that Elvis pompadour. It was less a hairstyle, more a national distraction strategy. While workers lost security, while wages froze, while whole generations were shoved into irregular employment, the media obsessed over Koizumi's shampoo brand. But even hairstyles age, and after Koizumi left, what did Japan get? Shinzo Abe, a man with hair so stiff it looked like it was cemented in place by the Bank of Japan itself. If Koizumi was the rock star, Abe was the funeral director. Koizumi privatized the postal bank. Abe privatized the future entirely. Together, they were like a comedy duo performing the world's longest skit called Japan's Eternal Stagnation. Koizumi's genius was cosmetic politics, reform as performance. Abe simply took that performance and doubled down. Sound bites, photo ops, slogans like Abenomics that were basically just 3 arrows pointing nowhere. If Koizumi's hair was a lion's mane, Abe's was a helmet, designed not to inspire but to endure endless press conferences where he said nothing. And yet both men are celebrated as leaders, Koizumi for his daring reforms, Abe for his long tenure. But look closely. The economy shrank, society collapsed, inequality widened, and the middle class vanished. The only thing that grew were hair salons and speechwriters. So Koizumi's legacy is this. He taught Japan that politics is about performance, not results. He made sure dynasties thrived while workers died quietly in irregular jobs. And he handed the baton, or should we say the comb, to Abe, ensuring that Japan's future would be built not on reform, but on moose, slogans, and denial. Koizumi didn't just reform Japan, he styled it into decline. His hair was his policy, and his son was his exit plan. Abe was merely the encore, less Elvis, more elevator music. So let's wrap this up. For decades, Japan has blamed the Plaza Accord like a bad breakup story. It's not me, it's America. But when you peel back the excuses, The true villain of the modern collapse isn't Washington or exchange rates. It's Junichiro Koizumi, the man who turned structural reform into structural ruin while styling his hair like a Vegas tribute act. His so-called reforms gave us irregular workers, shattered families, and a disposable generation now staring at retirement with nothing but 7-Eleven bento boxes. He handed the nation's savings to investors, launched his son into politics like a golden parachute, and left the middle class to rot. And yet, people remember him fondly. Why? Because in Japan, charisma and cool hair matter more than actual results. Then came Shinzo Abe, Koizumi's political heir, a man who perfected the art of saying nothing in as many words as possible. Together, their legacies are clear: style over substance, slogans over solutions, and generations sacrificed on the altar of reform. So next time someone blames Japan's decline on the Plaza Accord, just smile. Tell them the truth. Japan wasn't killed by currency intervention in 1985. It was strangled by its own leaders, one bad haircut at a time. And here's the cruel irony. While Koizumi's dynasty thrives in politics, Japan's ordinary people are stuck playing musical chairs in a room where the music stopped 20 years ago. But hey, at least the Prime Minister looked good on camera, right? Ladies and gentlemen, that's Koizumi's Japan, neoliberalism with hair gel.